For 50 years, science lied to you about what an alpha actually is. And that lie has been destroying INFJs from the inside out. The whole concept came from wolfpack research, where scientists assumed the most aggressive animal was running the show. Turns out they were completely wrong. Those same researchers went back later and basically said, "We got that backwards. Real wolf packs aren't led by the most violent member. They're led by the parent, the one who makes smart decisions, keeps the group fed and safe, and moves everyone in the right direction through competence, not force." But nobody got that memo. So for decades, we've been celebrating the wrong version of strength, while the real alphas sat quietly in the background, convinced they were broken. If you're an INFJ who spent years feeling like something's wrong with you because you don't fit the loud, aggressive leadership model, listen carefully. You weren't built wrong. The model was wrong. And what I'm about to show you is going to flip everything you thought you knew about power, influence, and what it actually means to lead. The real alphas were never making noise. They were making change. And they've been doing it so quietly that most people missed it entirely. But being rare isn't just a statistic. It's a tactical advantage that most people never see coming. And it starts with a specific way your brain is wired that makes you a strategic anomaly. Before we start, please hit the like button, comment, and subscribe so you won't miss any of our weekly deep dives into the world of personality types. And if you're looking for a deeper understanding of yourself and your INFJ personality, browse our favorite INFJ products in the description, and click the link in the comments to take our favorite free personality test. The rarity factor. Let's start with numbers that matter more than you think. Out of every 100 people you've ever met, your teachers, coworkers, family members, friends, statistically, only 1 or 2 of them are INFJs. Some studies put it even lower. We're talking about a personality type so rare you could go an entire year without knowingly meeting a single one. But here's what makes this interesting. It's not just the rarity itself. It's what that rarity actually produces in terms of cognitive architecture. INFJs are built differently. Not physically, but the way their brain processes information is fundamentally unlike almost any other type of person on the planet. Their mind doesn't work in straight lines like most people's does. It works in webs, dense, interconnected, constantly shifting networks of patterns and meaning. This is the engine behind everything that makes an INFJ dangerous in the best possible way. When you understand how rare this kind of mind actually is, everything else starts making sense. Think about it this way. If you're one of 50 people in a room, and 49 of them process information in roughly similar patterns, but you process it through this web-like system that connects everything to everything else, you're going to see things they miss. You're going to catch patterns they don't notice. You're going to arrive at conclusions that seem to come out of nowhere, but turn out to be exactly right. This isn't mysticism, it's mathematics. When your cognitive architecture is fundamentally different from 98% of the population, you end up with a strategic advantage that can't be replicated through confidence or charisma or any amount of loud posturing. The web inside an INFJ's mind operates mostly below the surface. It's running quietly, processing constantly, connecting dots that other people don't even see as dots. Then, out of seemingly nowhere, it delivers a conclusion so precise it catches even the INFJ off guard sometimes. Carl Jung, who first mapped out these cognitive functions, called people with dominant introverted intuition prophets. Not because they predict the future like fortune tellers, but because their ability to synthesize hidden patterns and arrive at insights no one else has reached yet is genuinely that sharp. Now, everything I've just told you about your mind won't actually work if you don't understand the one specific cognitive glitch that gives you an edge over 98% of the population. We'll get to that in a second, but first, we need to look at how this web creates what researchers call the old soul effect. INFJs often seem older than they actually are because they're processing experiences on multiple layers simultaneously. Where most people might have a moment, react to it, and move on, An INFJ absorbs the emotion, the meaning, the larger pattern it represents, and how it connects to everything else they've observed. A single conversation becomes a lesson. That lesson gets woven into the web that's constantly building inside their mind. By the time an INFJ hits their 20s or 30s, they carry a weight of understanding that most people don't accumulate until decades later. And here's the crucial part. This kind of wisdom, earned rather than inherited, creates one of the quietest and most powerful forms of authority that exists. People don't always know why they trust an INFJ. They just do. It's that old soul effect, operating completely under the radar. This rarity factor isn't just about being different. It's about having access to a type of intelligence that the vast majority of people simply don't possess. When you combine that with the emotional attunement we'll explore next, you get something that looks nothing like traditional leadership, but works better than almost anything else. The question isn't whether INFJs are rare. The question is what happens when that rarity meets the right situation. Reading between the lines. Most people miss this next detail, but it changes everything about how you interact with the world. It's the reason you can feel a lie before it's even spoken. Now let's talk about something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. The INFJ's ability to see right through you. This isn't some supernatural gift or mystical power. It's the direct result of how two specific cognitive functions work together inside the INFJ mind. Introverted intuition picks up on patterns. Extroverted feeling tunes into the emotional frequency of every room they enter. When you combine those two functions, you get a person who can decode body language, catch the subtle shift in someone's tone, notice the microexpression that flickers across a face for half a second, and piece all of it together into an accurate read of what that person is actually thinking. Not what they're saying, what they're thinking. Research into INFJ cognitive functions shows this combination makes them remarkably skilled at spotting dishonesty and detecting ulterior motives. They're often the first person in any room to sense that something isn't right, even when everyone else is still buying the act. Think about what that means for leadership. You can't effectively guide people if you don't understand them. And understanding people, really understanding them beneath the surface they present to the world, is something the INFJ does better than almost any other personality type alive. Here's how it actually works in practice. While everyone else is listening to the words being spoken, the INFJ is simultaneously tracking vocal patterns, watching for incongruence between facial expressions and stated emotions, noting who makes eye contact when certain topics come up, observing who shifts their posture when specific names get mentioned. They're reading the room like a complex piece of music with multiple instruments playing at once. Most people can only follow the melody. The INFJ hears the harmony, the rhythm section, the subtle discord that suggests someone's playing in the wrong key. This creates an almost unfair advantage in group dynamics. When the INFJ walks into a meeting, they don't just hear what people are saying about the project. They sense who's actually committed, who's got reservations they're not voicing, who's positioning themselves for credit, and who's genuinely concerned about potential problems. They know which relationships in the room are strained before anyone acknowledges it openly. They can tell when someone's enthusiasm is genuine versus when it's performance. They spot the person who's checked out emotionally, even while they're nodding along. But here's where it gets really interesting. This reading ability doesn't just help them understand what's happening. It helps them predict what's going to happen next. Because patterns repeat. The person who's showing microexpressions of frustration during this meeting is probably going to create problems down the line. The team member who's giving enthusiastic verbal agreement while their body language screams reluctance is likely to become a bottleneck later. The colleague who keeps deflecting questions about their part of the project is probably already behind schedule. The INFJ sees these patterns developing in real time, and that gives them the ability to address issues before they become crises, to have conversations before they become confrontations, to make adjustments before things fall apart. This is why INFJs make such effective leaders, even when they're not officially in charge. They're operating with information that other people don't have access to. They're seeing the full picture, while everyone else is looking at fragments. Most people think leadership is about having the right answers. But the INFJ understands that leadership is about asking the right questions. And you can't ask the right questions unless you know what's really going on beneath the surface. This pattern recognition extends beyond individual interactions too. INFJs can sense when entire systems are under stress, when organizational cultures are shifting, when group morale is starting to crack. They feel these changes in the atmosphere before they show up in performance metrics or official complaints. That's not weakness. That's not being too sensitive. That's having access to data streams that most people can't even perceive, let alone interpret accurately. And when you combine this reading ability with the strategic processing power we talked about earlier, you get someone who doesn't just understand what's happening now. They understand what it means for everything that comes next. Now, this next part is where things get genuinely uncomfortable for the people around you. Because once you see the full picture, you start to realize something about their motives that they haven't even admitted to themselves yet. The contradiction paradox. Here's where the INFJ becomes genuinely fascinating and completely confusing to most people. They seem to be made entirely of opposites that somehow coexist without canceling each other out. Introverted but deeply invested in other people's well-being. Sensitive enough to feel overwhelmed by a crowded restaurant, but capable of making brutal decisions when their values are on the line. Quiet in most conversations, but absolutely immovable when they believe in something. Gentle in their daily interactions, but ruthless when someone repeatedly crosses their boundaries. Most personality types lean heavily in one direction or another. You're either tough or you're tender. You're either a people person or you prefer solitude. You're either emotional or you're logical. The INFJ refuses to pick a side because they don't see these as contradictions. They see them as tools in a toolkit, and they use whichever tool the situation actually requires. This is why traditional leadership models completely miss what makes the INFJ effective. Those models assume you need to be consistent in your approach, always confident, always decisive, always projecting strength in the same way. But real leadership isn't one-dimensional. The challenges that leaders face every single day demand someone who can hold empathy and logic in the same hand, who can care deeply about individuals while still making the tough call for the group, who can be gentle in private conversations and unyielding in public decisions, who can listen with genuine compassion and then act with surgical precision. Most personality types can do one or the other well. The INFJ does both simultaneously, naturally, without it feeling forced or fake. Take the famous INFJ door slam we mentioned earlier. To outsiders, it looks like a contradiction. How can someone who's so caring and understanding suddenly become so cold and final? But it's not a contradiction at all. It's the same value system expressing itself in different ways. The INFJ cares deeply about authentic relationships and emotional honesty. When someone repeatedly violates that through manipulation, dishonesty, or emotional drain, the door slam isn't an emotional reaction. It's a strategic decision made by someone who values their peace more than anyone else's comfort. This is iron discipline wrapped in a calm exterior. This is someone who has thought through every possible outcome and decided with absolute clarity that their well-being matters more than maintaining a relationship that's become toxic. Most people spend years learning how to set boundaries that firm. The INFJ just does it quietly, completely, and without looking back. The same pattern shows up in how they handle conflict. They'll avoid unnecessary confrontation because they genuinely prefer harmony. But when the confrontation becomes necessary, when someone's behavior is damaging the group or violating core principles, the INFJ doesn't escalate gradually like most people do. They go from patient to finished in one clean movement. This isn't inconsistency. It's strategic flexibility rooted in genuine understanding rather than people-pleasing or image management. They adapt their approach based on what the moment actually requires, not what looks impressive or what other people expect. In a team meeting, they might be the quiet observer who asks thoughtful questions. In a crisis, they become the steady voice that everyone turns to for clarity. In a situation where someone's being treated unfairly, they transform into an advocate who won't back down. This kind of flexibility, this ability to access different aspects of their personality based on what's needed rather than what's comfortable, is one of the rarest and most valuable leadership qualities in existence. It's also why the INFJ doesn't just lead well in one type of situation. They adapt. They read what the room needs and become that, without losing their core identity in the process. You might think these traits make you inconsistent, but this next revelation will literally flip your greatest insecurity into your most dominant leadership tool. Most people see contradictions and assume weakness or confusion, but in the INFJ, contradictions create strength. They create a leader who can navigate complexity because they embody complexity. They understand that real situations require nuanced responses, and they have access to the full spectrum of human capability when those situations arise. That's not weakness masquerading as strength. That's actual strength that doesn't need to announce itself to be effective. But how do you actually use this power to lead without becoming the loud, aggressive person you despise? There is a specific method called the quiet takeover, and once you see it in action, you can't unsee it. The quiet takeover method. Here's what it actually looks like when an INFJ leads, and it's nothing like what you'd expect from traditional leadership models. They don't announce it, they don't give a speech about their vision on day one. They don't call a meeting to establish their authority or outline their plan to transform everything. Instead, they do something that most people completely miss because it looks like nothing at all. They observe, they listen, they spend time understanding the people around them, the dynamics at play, the unspoken tensions, and most importantly, the gaps that nobody else has bothered to look at. Every group, every team, every organization has these gaps. The things that should be happening but aren't. The conversations that need to occur but keep getting postponed. The problems that everyone knows about but no one wants to address directly. The connections between people that could exist but don't because no one's taken the time to facilitate them. While everyone else is focused on their own responsibilities or positioning themselves for recognition, the INFJ is mapping the entire ecosystem. They're noting who works well together and who creates friction. They're identifying which processes are actually working and which ones people are just pretending to follow. They're spotting the bottlenecks, the communication breakdowns, the places where things consistently fall through cracks. And then, piece by piece, they start to fill those gaps. Not dramatically, not all at once, not in a way that draws attention to what they're doing. They simply start making small adjustments that improve how things flow. They have a conversation with someone who's been feeling overlooked. They suggest a slight change to a process that's been causing problems. They connect two people who should be working together but haven't realized it yet. They ask a question in a meeting that everyone was thinking but no one wanted to voice. Each individual action seems minor, but the cumulative effect is that things start working better. Communication improves. Conflicts get resolved before they escalate. Projects move more smoothly. People feel more heard and understood. By the time most people realize what's happened, the INFJ has already changed the direction of the entire room, team, project, or conversation. And here's the most remarkable part. Most of the people who were influenced don't even realize they were influenced. They just think things are going better now. They think the atmosphere feels different. They can't quite put their finger on why, but somehow the whole environment has become more productive, more collaborative, more positive. That's the quiet takeover. That's the INFJ at work. And it is without question one of the most effective forms of influence that exists. It works because it's based on actual understanding rather than performance. The INFJ isn't trying to impose their will on a situation. They're trying to help the situation reach its potential by removing obstacles and creating connections that allow natural strengths to emerge. They're not leading through force or charisma or manipulation. They're leading through service. They make everyone around them more effective, and in doing so, they become indispensable without ever demanding recognition. This approach produces better long-term results than any amount of traditional command and control leadership, because it creates genuine buy-in rather than compliance. People don't follow the INFJ because they have to. They follow because things work better when the INFJ is involved. But here's the shadow side that most people miss. This method comes with a cost that can be devastating if the INFJ doesn't recognize it. Because they're so focused on filling gaps and supporting others, they often end up carrying emotional responsibility for entire groups. They become the person everyone turns to when things go wrong. They absorb stress that isn't theirs to carry. They sacrifice their own needs to keep systems running smoothly. This can lead to burnout that's particularly brutal because it's invisible to everyone else. The INFJ looks fine on the surface, while they're slowly drowning in other people's problems and unexpressed expectations. The quiet takeover method works brilliantly, but only when the INFJ learns to set boundaries around their own energy and emotional capacity. Without those boundaries, their greatest strength becomes their greatest vulnerability. Historical proof and modern relevance. Let's look at history for a second, because the INFJ fingerprint shows up in some of the most transformative leaders the world has ever seen. Mahatma Gandhi, the man who helped dismantle an entire colonial empire through nonviolent resistance, fits the INFJ profile in almost every way. His value system was so deeply rooted from an early age that no amount of external pressure could move him. He didn't lead by being the loudest or most aggressive. He led through convictions so pure and so persistent that it became impossible to ignore. People didn't follow Gandhi because he demanded it. They followed him because his certainty was contagious. He embodied the quiet takeover method on a massive scale, shifting the consciousness of an entire nation without ever raising his voice. Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison and came out the other side not with bitterness, but with the strategic clarity to negotiate the end of apartheid, carries the same signature. Colleagues described him as gentle and soft-spoken in conversation, but with a quiet confidence that disarmed even his opponents. He didn't break the system by being louder than it. He outlasted it. Eleanor Roosevelt transformed the role of First Lady, and later became a driving force behind the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Martin Luther King Jr. changed the course of civil rights through moral authority rather than political power. The list goes on. These weren't people who dominated rooms with their presence. They dominated history with their purpose. And that distinction is everything when it comes to understanding what real alpha energy actually looks like in action. Now here's why this matters right now. We live in an era that rewards spectacle. The loudest voices get the most attention. The most dramatic reactions get the most engagement. The people who perform confidence the hardest are the ones who get labeled as leaders. But here's what's actually producing results in the real world, in boardrooms, in communities, in families, in every space where genuine change happens. It's not the spectacle, it's the substance. It's the person who saw the problem before anyone else did. The person who cared enough to act on it without needing an audience. The person who led not because they wanted credit, but because the situation genuinely needed someone to step up. That's INFJ energy. And in a world that's been drowning in noise, it might be the most desperately needed thing we have. We don't need more people performing strength. We need more people actually practicing it. The INFJ has been doing exactly that, in the background, without recognition, with devastating effectiveness, for a very long time. It's just that nobody's been paying close enough attention to see it. If you're an INFJ watching this right now, every trait that society taught you was a weakness. The sensitivity, the depth, the way you see through people so clearly it isolates you, none of that is weakness. All of it is power. Raw, unfiltered, rare power that doesn't need to be loud to be felt. You weren't broken. You were just operating on a frequency most people weren't tuned into. You're the real alpha. You always were. If you want to continue the journey to understanding yourself or an INFJ in your life, click either of the following videos where we continue to unlock the secrets of the INFJ personality type.